Hey everyone, Audrey and Rebecca from Inbox Academy with you today. And we wanted to talk about the top email marketing terms you actually need to know. So if you've ever opened an email service provider or you heard, email marketers talking and you thought, what in the world are they even saying? Because you and I have both been there in our early years, right? This video is for you. We want to reassure you if you're dipping your toes into email marketing and you're learning about it and trying to figure out if this is something that you want to grow in, there is really only a handful of terms that you need to know to get started, and you can learn the rest as you go. So, we're breaking down those 8 most important ones in plain English for you today. All right, so the first one is ESP, which is email service provider. This is the platform that you actually send emails from. So you can hear different ESPs like Klaviyo, MailChimp, MailerLite, Kit, right? These are all ESPs. It's basically your email home base. So it matters because this is where everything lives. There's your lists, your emails, your automations. So this is a pretty basic term, and you definitely don't want to get lost if someone just says, like, yeah, what ESPs do you work in?
Yes. Yeah, it's literally it just means the software. And I will say one thing that we get a lot of confusion around or get a lot of questions from people of, if they want to be an email marketer is they're like, "Well, which one should I get?" And they think that they need to pay for one in order to, do this for other people, for their clients. And that actually is a misconception. So usually the business itself, whatever business is going to send the marketing emails from that business is going to have an email service provider. Maybe a business that's really early on that hasn't even started collecting emails yet, they might not have one set up yet, and you might help them with that. But generally, a business already has an email service provider. You are just going to become a user on their account and get in there and take care of things for them. So you don't actually need to just have one, account for all of your clients to come and use. That's not how this works. It's actually that you're going to get into their software and help them run it from that side. So,
And you're not responsible for the monthly bill for the ESP either. That is all on the client's plate. You're just simply getting in there and doing the work from it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a real. We do have some students though that have gotten like some free versions of ESPs to just kind of like poke around and feel a little more confident before they take on like a new client project or something like that, or while they're working through our course, which is a really cool idea.
Yeah. Or to
So
start their
that's
own list. So,
yeah, exactly.
all of those are valid options for sure.
All right, so our next two terms kind of play into each other. So I'm going to give them to you at once, and that is list and segment. So a list is a big container of your subscribers, right? It is everyone. And then your segment is that smaller groups that you make based on behavior or traits, right? So a segment can be like people who clicked the last email or people who bought something specifically in the last like certain, time period that you want to set that for. So this right here is kind of where personalization comes in. You have better targeting, which is going to equal better results for your email campaigns.
Yeah, and a lot of ESPs will actually only really let you have one list, and then you have all of those segments within the list that, segments can kind of be dynamic. They can grow and get bigger and smaller and stuff, but it's just really subgroups. And the way that I do like to think of it, if you are in an ESP that lets you have multiple lists, usually the only reason I ever want to have multiple lists is if I want the subscriber to be able to unsubscribe from one list without unsubscribing from the other. And to give you an example that is one of the only times I've really used this is when a store has like a wholesale component. And so they've got, all of these kind of like this B2B aspect of their business. And then they also have a direct to consumer side, meaning that, they're selling e-commerce products like directly to the consumer. And so they have their regular email marketing list that is mostly subscribers that are direct to consumer, that are ordering products off their website and everything like that. And then they also have their list of wholesale customers. And the wholesale customers, of course, you know, they need to talk to them in a different way. But there's some overlap there of those customers also might like to receive the marketing emails. They want to stay in touch with the brand and what, updates or new products are coming out and things like that. And you might talk to those audiences in very different ways. And you might also have certain people who want to be on one list and not the other. They may want to be on both, but they may not, and that's up to them. And that way they can unsubscribe or subscribe in whichever way makes the most sense to them. So that's kind of how I like to think of it. If you were ever going to have separate lists, it's because there's a specific reason that you think they might want to subscribe to a specific part of it and not receive the other part of it, and be able to use that unsubscribe in that
Wow.
way.
I would say the other way I've done several lists is like working for someone specifically that had 2 to 3 different companies, and they wanted everything in one spot in Klaviyo, but, like, one and they were wildly different, and this owner did not want to, like, mesh them at all. He didn't wanna, like so one was, like, clothing, one was supplement, like a collagen and creatine line, right? And then the other one was like literally stationary. Like they're so different. And they all had a different name, but they were all run by him and he wanted to keep them individual. So within Klaviyo, we had 3 different lists, right? We had 3 different welcome series and automations going on that triggered when they joined that specific list, and 3 different messaging going to 3 different, groups of people. So, yeah, so you're right. But the list was the broader, it was the big container holding everyone for that brand. And then the segment was how I broke down things so that I could specifically talk to them. Because that's honestly, segmentation is where emails start to feel smart and intentional and they don't feel spammy. So, knowing the difference between those two is pretty big. All right, so we're going to go on to our next 2 terms, which are campaign and flow. So, campaign, you can hear as several different things, but traditionally you're going to see campaign. It can be a broadcast, right? But this is a one-time send, like a newsletter or a promotion. Maybe you send it weekly, like a blog blast or an update on a YouTube video. These are all campaigns. And then you have your flows, which you can have more than one. You can also hear called automations or drips. Those are different terms you might hear. These are automated by actions. So when I talked about, someone coming into one of those lists and then it triggering, they go into a welcome sequence. So they're all set up and they're just triggered by that action. So that can be your welcome series, it can be an abandoned cart flow, a sunset flow. There's just all kinds of different ones that you can play around with there. So it matters because flows truly do bring in businesses that passive income. It is working when they're sleeping, it is working in all different time zones across the globe. Campaigns are your consistent touch points. So you're nurturing, you're touching base with them at where they're at in their journey, if they bought, if they haven't bought, if they've, left a review, things like that, right? And then again, those campaigns are manual, flows work while you sleep. So those are the differences there, but those are 2 terms that you are going to hear and that you should know what they mean.
Yeah, and campaign is one that really confused me when I was starting out because in the general marketing arena, right, that word is used in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. And to the point that also my clients were using that word in ways that didn't make sense to me as an email marketer and what we know that word to mean. So they would say, oh, we're going to have a Mother's Day campaign. And what they actually meant was an entire, series of emails that are all related to that ad structure and things like that. Whereas in my brain, that campaign meant that single email, right? And
Mhm.
so it's always good if you're, I know what it's like to be a beginner. I know how, scary it can be to admit that you don't understand something, but always, always, always clarify with your clients, right? If you're not sure that you're speaking about something in the same way, because campaign, yeah, I mean, inside of ESPs, they label them differently. Some call them broadcasts, so some call them, just email or newsletter and things like that. But some of them do call them campaign, but your client might be using that word in a completely different way. So definitely just make sure you're clarifying
Ask
that.
questions, always ask
Yeah.
questions. Yeah, you're right. Because sometimes, they're not the email expert. They're hiring you to do email work. They think they know what these terms mean, and they're using them incorrectly, and it's like, just get very crystal clear so you can execute that work for them properly. Absolutely agree. All right, so our next term is deliverability. This is a big one. That basically means whether your emails are landing in the inbox, or are they being seen, or are they going to spam? So, you can write the best email ever, but if it's not delivered, it doesn't matter, right? You've missed so many beautiful opportunities to reach people that subscribed specifically to that list and want to hear from you. So, yeah, you have any thoughts on this? Have you have any client stories or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, deliverability is a big one that actually is where clients kind of throw up their red flag and say, "Hey, I need some help finally," because they can try to DIY it all the time, and if they don't understand this component of email, it can really steer the ship in the wrong direction. So, like you said, this is what puts people into the spam folder and things like that. So, there's, a lot to learn in the back end of how to have good quality deliverability. That's, not just its own video, but its own entire part of a course. Like we have a whole module on it basically. So we can't really get into all of that today, but just basically understanding what it is that it is kind of all of those components that will get you into the inbox and not in spam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot to go with that. Like you said, you might, as the email marketer for someone that is landing in spam, you might have to make sure their domain is set up properly, make sure their email is registered properly, like you've got to look at things we talked about that we talk about a lot in Inbox Academy, like your preview line and spam triggers, and you got to keep the list clean. Again, everything we teach in Inbox Academy, deliverability is huge. It's right up there. Like, you can do everything else right, but if you're not getting in their inbox, if you're repeatedly going into spam, like who cares on any of that, what's in the email? So, just so you know, if you hear this deliverability, that is what they're referring to is, where are you landing? Are people seeing your emails? All right. So, the last two terms I'm going to throw at you that you really should know are open rate and click rate. So, pretty obvious, right? But we're going to touch on it anyways. So, your open rate is, did they open it, right? To the amount of people you sent it to, did they open it? And that's where you ask yourself, did my subject line, did my preview line do its job? You also have to take into account, as an email marketer, what is the deliverability looking like with this, specific client? What is their history there? How can I improve it? These are things you want to think about as you want to improve an open rate, or, get it up there, or whatever your situation is. And then there's the click rate. So it's, okay, they opened the email, but out of everybody who opened it, did they click anything? Did they do what I asked them to do? Did they follow that CTA, that, call to action? Did the email do its job? So again, this matters because it helps you understand what's working, what's not working, and it tells you, like the open tells you if they're curious, and the click tells you if they really care about what they ended up reading, or you're talking to the right people to begin with, right? Maybe you have to look at your segmentation and make sure that that message is matching the people you're talking to. But open rate and click rate are huge.
And just in case you're totally unfamiliar with them, these are usually represented as a percentage. So you'll
Yes.
see click rates, 30%, 40%, 70%, whatever your open rate is, and click rates, tend to be more down around 1%, 5%, a little bit lower, but yeah, those definitely are just kind of your baseline numbers. And I always really like to think, especially when you're coming into a new account and maybe less familiar with the audience and everything like that, just thinking of it as, watching the trend over time, right? If you're seeing, an open rate, whether you think it's good or bad or whatever, it's all about the trend. So are you able to, start getting that to grow? Are you able to take that in the right direction and continue to build on what they've got there?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you understand these 8 terms already, like you've watched this and you're like, I already know all these, you are ahead of most beginners because Audrey and I did not know these as we were beginners. We all start somewhere. But I want to reassure anyone that's like, you didn't know these terms and you're learning something new. I know this stuff sounds technical, but it is so learnable. Like it's literally to understand what it is as easy as what we've said here. Just plain English layman's terms, like it's simple to understand and it's a great starting point. So, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. And in the description, we will throw in our email list link. Make sure you jump on that if you're not on it already, because we get tips like this all the time, ways to help you learn about email marketing. And if you're already an email marketer, we're always adding tips that can just help you get stronger at what you're doing and understand things even more and in depth. So, yeah, make sure you jump on there and we would love to keep talking there. All right, guys, have a great day and we'll see you soon. Bye.